Hey, what's going on, everyone? I'm going to try to do this in one take, so bear with me here. Here we go. So this is the difference between enums and arrays. So basically, in enum, the way that you want to think about it and the way that our book kind of defines it, or I see I've defined it here in layman's terms, but basically it's something that it's a bunch of distinct values that helps the programmer or whoever is looking at the code keep track of what the values mean. So for instance, like in our assignment, if I pull this up here in the card HPP file, I have two enumerated classes. I have suits and faces. We'll just look at the suits class for now, but I could have just easily said 1, 2, 3, and 4 and made an array, which is a data container that we'll talk about in a second. But that doesn't really help me as a programmer looking at the numbers, having a conceptualization of what it means to be a suit. I want to kind of put it in real world terms so that I can keep track of those things in my head and as I'm going throughout my code. So enums are really kind of a tool that allows us to use that, and they're best kind of seen through examples. So here I have some colors, so I can think of that as a type of array, or sorry, as a type of enumerated class. So here I have enum color, red, yellow, green, and that's unscoped. And this is a little bit riskier because you don't have the scope specifier. So when I say scoped, I mean that's following scoped rules, meaning that you have to basically do the scope resolution, which would be, in this case, because it has this term class here, that means that it has to follow the scope rules. So if I were to then write that in my main or somewhere, I would resolve it. And then I know exactly what I'm talking about because color refers to this enumerated class. So that's kind of like an extra layer of specifics that's involved in that. And then, so we wanted to distinguish between an enumerated class and an array. Well, an array can be thought of more of like a data structure. And basically, it's a container where you can put your data. And an array is a particular type of data structure, so there's multiple ones that you can choose from. For instance, array is closely related to a vector, and there's a trade-off between performance and flexibility between these two that we'll talk about. At its core, an array is a container of unnamed objects of a single type that we can access by position or index. So what I mean by that is if we have something like this, it's a container of unnamed objects, so these objects don't have a name, of a single type. The type is int in this case, and we can access it by the position. So I wrote 1, 2, 3, but really the positions here are 0, 1, and 2 because programmers start by counting at 0, unless you're working in MATLAB, but that's a topic for another class. So arrays have fixed size. They're not as flexible as a vector because of the fixed size, but because they have a fixed size, they sometimes offer better runtime performance. So that's something you might want to consider maybe if you're writing a huge program and you're concerned about runtime performance. One of the special notes here, though, is that if you don't know how many elements or what size for the array, you should probably use vector instead. And the analogy I like to think of here is like a ladder. So for instance, if I know that how high it is to my ceiling, I can just get away with buying a single ladder. But for instance, the fire department, if you've ever seen like a hook and ladder truck, the ladder that they have on the end of the truck extends because it needs to fit whatever size, and they don't know the size of the house that they're going to that's on fire. So think about the extendable ladders sort of being a vector, and it can change size. So that can help you distinguish between the two. So we'll look very quickly at how these two concepts are implemented in our assignment 1. And the two concepts are the enumerated class and the array. So first we'll look at the enumerated class. So here I have an enum class. So class means that it's going to be scoped. And this one is called suits. So I said spades is equal to 1, and then it'll count up sequentially. So spades, clubs, hearts, and diamonds. Those are the four suits that I'm working with. And then we have no suit equals 100 here. That's probably for protection. I'm not really 100% sure. I probably wouldn't have thought to write that, but Professor Gessner knows a little bit more than I do. So I'll accept that. So we can see that this is... So each card has a suit and a face, and we give these enums because we want to. It makes more sense to us as programmers. Looking at the that's 5 minutes there, so I know I'm doing well here. I'll try not to go over time. So here we have an array. So I want to take the suits and I want to put them in an array because I want to be able to iterate and access the elements in the array. So the way that I can think about that, like we said, it's a container of unnamed objects of a single type that we access by position. So in this case, my type is suits. So I'm putting suits into my suits array, aptly named, and I'm going to say that I have spades, clubs, hearts, and diamonds. And you'll see this is the scope resolution here because remember, I made an enumerated class, which means I have to resolve the scope. It has to follow the scope rules. Now, why did I make an array of suits? Well, the simple answer for that is because I can iterate over an array. And that really helps me when I write a function such as initialize cards, which I want to do every time that I construct a deck. Right? When I construct my deck here, I'm going to call initialize cards. And what that is allowing me to do is basically build a deck out of thin air. And the way that I'm doing that is here I have my deck of cards, DEQE, QUE, double-ended Q. And it follows, the same terminology that a vector would do, where I'm pushing back elements into this as I'm building it up, one card at a time. So the way that I'm doing that here is I'm iterating over. I introduce this iterator variable, which is type auto, so it'll match whatever type this is. And this is the suits array. That's the same thing that I saw up here. So I'm iterating. This is a range-based for loop, and I'm iterating over the size of this array, one element at a time, and I have nested loops here, so I'm iterating all the faces. So starting with the first suit is spades, and I'm iterating through the faces array, through all these faces, and then I'm pushing back the cards one by one. Then once I get to the last face, which is ace, it's going to go back to 2 here, and then I'm going to pop out of this loop and then bump up 1 here into clubs. So I guess they serve two purposes here. Right, is my enumerated classes make it easier for me as a programmer in conclusion to know what the distinct values and the elements that I'm dealing with. And the array allows me a container to iterate over and a way to access by position those values that I have stored within it. So I hope this is helpful for you guys and shed some light on arrays and enumerated classes. Thank you.